brother didn't have anything to eat back there. You know, I mean, the family was big and they didn't have a lot of work. And so at age 14 and 15, they left home. And they were totally on their own from that point on. They came over here to the valley and got a job as sheep herders. And they took hundreds of sheep all by themselves the first summer up into the upper Entiat and had them there all summer long, took care of them and brought them back out. Never lost any sheep that I understand. And they had to bring all their food in the first time because they couldn't go in and out. There's Chelan Camp if you go to the end of the road up the Entiat and then go on up about a couple, 3 miles or however far past the end of the road is this called Chelan Camp. And it's still there today. It was called Chelan Camp up there. It has a sign on the tree. And during that time they were up there, a bear attacked them, and one of them got an ear tore off, I believe, and the other one laid down and played dead, if I remember right, behind a log, and the bear left him alone and finally left, you know. But who would know? I mean, can you imagine your brother, age 14, and you taking hundreds of sheep, walk them all the way up the canyon and work your way up there and stay there all summer long, the first time in your life you're away from home, with a huge job of watching after hundreds of sheep. Something else, you know. Back then, people did some stuff that was way different than we do it today. So, anyway, that's the kind of thing, you know. And you look for those stories and try to draw it out of them, you know. Is there anything that you remember that's unique to this valley, you know? Do you remember? Because what we're looking for, one of the things we're looking for is somebody to say something about cattle raising here in the Entiat. Did you know that this started out to be a huge cattle ranch? The whole Entiat area, like 800 acres of hay. There was no Entiat there. It was just a big farm. And then for some reason or other it wasn't doing well or something, so they broke it all up in little pieces and sold it as lots. You know, Entiat Fruitlands, they called it, I believe, is the one that, you know, so you look for things like that. You know, how did the Numeral Mountains start? You know, what was the first number that was ever put up there? And who put it up there? I don't know. And you'll run into, like I don't think it was my dad, but somebody, one of the years, really early on, like 17 or 20 or something, you know, they couldn't find a place to put their own number up on the wall, so they went and painted their number over somebody else's number. You know, and that may be why that other number is missing. Do you see what I mean? And we're looking for things that are unique to the valley, and it's hard telling how you'll run across it, but I would always be listening to them, and if you hear them say something that's kind of weird or different, or, you know, you haven't heard anything about it yet, you write it down or log it in and say, hey, you mentioned the flood in 1948, you know, just about wiped out everything coming down the valley. And that bridge across from me, well, there's a bridge on the main road, and then you go across this way, and there's
Wasn't there a flood there too? Or
it came down the valley, and that packing shed on the other side of that bridge, it tore the front half of it off. You know, so there's all kind. In 1948, after that big flood came in, the Army Corps of Engineers came in, and they reamed the river out. I mean, they just made a huge channel out of it, all the way up to I know it went to the fish hatchery, past the fish hatchery, but you know, that's like 6 miles right there. And so now the water all goes right down the stream, you know. And it's been a lot of different, oh, you know, I'll give you another clue. I can't remember, now, here's what you look for, okay? You look for somebody that remembers a fire. Well, when we moved over here in 1971, I got married in 71 and moved over here, I can't remember whether the fire was going on. I think the fire was in 1970, okay? And it burned much of the upper Entiat, clear over to Lake Chelan, and dropped across the lake and burned more, okay? It was a huge fire, huge fire. And then the next year, that was 70, and I think in 71, Preston Creek, do you know where Preston Creek is?
I'm not sure.
Well, it's up the valley about 20 miles or so. All kinds of people live there now. There's a development there. And it was kind of an operation. There was a road there, roads that went down around and roads for this development. And there was houses in there, but Preston Creek itself was burned out completely. And so there was a flash flood, and it piled all of these trees up in a big pile way up there up that canyon, you know. And when they finally broke loose, they came down through there, and it went and hit right down through the middle of this development, and it killed 4 people, okay? And it literally hit this one house so fast that it knocked all the walls out of it like this, and the top part of the house came down right over here. I mean, it was booking, and I never will forget, there was a rock that came off the hill up there, off of Preston Creek. It was sitting right in the middle of the road, and it was just about as tall as that lower part of the ceiling there, and square. I mean, it was huge, and it came from clear over the mountain. The water just washed it out there. I mean, you could no more lift that thing. They got up with a jackhammer that thing apart and took it away, you know. And one of the bodies was found clear down just above our house, around the corner there, you know. And I think they never did find 1 or 2 of them. I think they found 2 bodies close to where we are, from 20 miles up, you know. So you look for that kind of story, and then you'll find somebody else that brings it up and starts talking about it. Well, each person that has been around that 1970 fire will have a different set of memories about it. And so when we go to do a thing in the museum about that fire, we may take a blip from Sky, and a cut from Yosemite, and a cut from me, and when it comes to that 1970 fire, you'll have 3 different people talking about that fire, you know, or whatever. And one of the other things that we're going to do in the museum, and you know, I think you guys kind of know technology way better than the rest of us do, but I want to be able to put a computer in, and it doesn't have to be a very smart computer. It just could be a dumb box, you know, and have a person be able to sit down at this screen and say, golly gee, here's the topics that I want to see. You select the fire of 70, or the Dickelman fire, or the schoolhouses, or, you know, these different things. Pick one, and it'll go over here and it'll give you 3 selections, you know, and you can select any 3 and it'll just sit there and play for you. I spent 33 days up in Alaska last year, and just driving around, going to different museums and, you know, whatever, fishing holes and whatever's up there, you know. And just about every museum had a display like that, and you could walk up to, you know, like this one I was thinking, it was really cool. You walked up to it and you could poke a button, and you had like 3 sources, 3 different buttons you could pick. One of them would give you a story about fishing, and one of them would give you a story about the mountain up there, and one of them would give you a story about something else, you know. So we have that capability, and also the Chelan County where I used to work gives away computers, and I think I can probably get some computers, I'm not sure. And there's 350 people in the county, all of them have computers. And in my office, there was 18 computers for 18 people. And then 1, 2, 3, probably 3 or 4 extras that did other things within the thing. And they replace these about every 5 or 6 years. So a 6-year-old computer that I'm using or somebody else is using will be pretty good, and we could use it for one of those stationary computers playing whatever. Or I think, Sky, correct me if I'm wrong, couldn't we program that thing to do more than one screen? Because I had dual screens at my desk when I quit, okay? And I could bring up anything I wanted to on either screen and have it there all the time, or multiple programs, you know? So, you know, all we need is a set of speakers over here, technology with this screen, and technology over here for this screen and another set, and, right?
You'd need 2 computers if you want 2 sets of speakers, but yeah.
You couldn't do it.
You couldn't have, they'd all be playing the speakers at the same time. You couldn't have.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying. But you could run maybe, well, okay, you can't.
You could run 2 monitors off of 1 computer, but they'd both be showing the same thing.
Well, not in my case. I had completely different. I'd run a couple programs here and like 3 over here, and I could run them all. However, I was only using them one at a time, you know, so you could have them all up, similar to, I guess, on a single screen. They gotta be able to do that.
They probably can, I just don't know.
I don't know how either, but you're right about only one jack in the back of a computer. How about going in and putting another video card?
You could, but you could also, they have a thing where you can put in 1 jack and it splits into 2.
Well, but that would give you the same talking again. I think you'd almost have to run 2 video cards, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, isn't that where the sound comes from, or the sound card, or whatever they call it?
I think so, but I don't know that. I don't know enough.
Well, talk to AJ or somebody and see if anybody knows, you know. Because I know just enough about computers to be really dangerous, you know, really bad. You know, I know that if you get it confused bad enough that you shut it off for 5 minutes, it'll come back to life. Maybe okay. So, anyway, I'm sorry. I got to talking. But you see where we're going with this thing? And I think it could be really exciting, and we have let so many old people die before we got this thing started. It's just crazy. I mean, there's probably 20 people in the last 5 years that have died that would be wonderful resources for that museum and all the stuff that we could put in it, you know. So,
Could you tell me about some of them?
about some of what?
The people who you just mentioned. That would be good for the museum.
Yeah, there's other people that could tell more about the people. You know, like Shorty Long, the current assessor right now, her dad grew up in the Entiat, and I grew up in the Entiat. I was, you know, the Longs, Peggy Long. Do you know Peggy?
I think so.
Who works in the office up here? The girls. What's their name?
Heather?
It used to be
Heather
Patty.
lives across the street. Isn't it Heather that lives across the street?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Okay, her husband is a Long, and his dad is a Long, and that would be the son of Shorty Long up there. Shorty Long lived up there forever and wrote a book on the Entiat, and his brother, which died long before he did, but he taught school here for 20 or 30 years, it seemed like, you know, I don't know for sure how many, and that's the current assessor's grandfather. They were both brothers, they were both short, and I went to 6th grade and had him, Mr. Long, for a teacher back then. You know, so there's a lot of ties. My mom came to the valley as a teacher, and let's be close. What time did the bell ring?
About 2 minutes.
Okay. Well, my mom came to this valley as a teacher, and every Friday night they'd have a social, and somebody would play something. They didn't have record players or anything back then. And he learned how to play the accordion, the old one with buttons on this side, buttons on this side. And she fell in love with him because he played the accordion, and married him and stayed here in the valley because he had an orchard. And he never played the accordion again after. And I still have the accordion, and I play the accordion myself. But you know, there's things like that. Ferries. Look for a story on the ferries. There used to be a ferry that went right. The one from Arundel was moved up down here to the park, and there's a ferry landing down there yet. And then they burned that ferry. But when I grew up, there was a ferry down at Arundel going across there, and one right down. Okay, you know where the sewer plant is out there below Entiat, below the food center?
Yeah, I live right next to it.
The sewer plant? Okay. Well, right over the hill, there was a ferry. Okay? That ferry went across the river on a cable. Okay? There was 2 ferries. They were both active. They were both busy because people went to Spokane that way, over to Waterville. And that ferry would break the cable every once in a while. And it'd go floating down the river. It had enough power to go across the river on a cable, but it didn't have enough power to buck the current and come back up. So it would get down there to the Arundel ferry. The Arundel ferry would go out and catch it and drag it back up and hook the cable up and get it back out in the river up here, you know. So, I mean, there's all kinds of stories like that. They just go on and on and on and on and on that are unique to this valley. And a ribbon cliff. Nobody around here remembers that I know of, but it fell in a river, and if you go out there and read about it, you know, it blocked the river up. Can you imagine the Columbia River blocked for a couple hours? Have you ever read that sign out there by Ribbon Cliff? You know, what was it, 2 hours?
I don't remember.
It's something like that. You know, I mean, it's like, holy cow, right? And you guys have to go back to school, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we didn't get anything, but, you know, I'm trying to give you a feel for where we're going with this thing, and I think it'll help you because you're going to interview 10 other people than me, you know, and their stories can be really probably much better than the ones I tell you, you know. So, does that help you?
Yeah.
Yeah, because